today the chamber is going to sit only in the morning. The session will be adjourned by 12 a.m. Before open the floor for the discussion, the chamber would like to instruct the parties as the following. This morning, we're going to bring about the matters challenged by the Defense Council. And the civil parties have the right to respond to any observations or grounds for the challenges that will be raised by the Defense Council. And at the same time, if there is any new grounds or matter raised by the civil parties, lawyers, then the Defense Council is entitled the right to also respond, but only the Defense Council can respond only once to the matter, and the chamber will not entertain the counter responses like what happened yesterday. So please be informed. The chamber has already heard and noted the observations of the co-prosecutors who expressively stated that they would not have any observations in relation to the matters raised by the civil party lawyers, the Defense Council. However, if the co-prosecutors would wish to make any comment or observation in relation to this matter, then they could inform the court. Now we would like to proceed with the Defense Council to present the grounds for their challenges in relation to the civil party applications. And these grounds should be presented on a case-by-case order. The President, could the Defense Council hold on, because we know that the civil party lawyer group 3 is on her feet. You may proceed.
Pour ce qui est des conseils de la défense, nous avons remarqué que Maître Truss souhaite intervenir. Je vous en prie, Madame.
Ms. Trusnaprus, thank you, Mr. President. Indeed, I said to you yesterday that before we review the civil party applications that might raise difficulties, I wanted to bring up a general points. Apparently, I'm not sure that I'm receiving. Yes, am I being heard? Yes, indeed, yes. So I would like to make a few observations, introductory observations that will allow me to cover a series of issues regarding the difficulties that that have been encountered in order to provide all of the elements regarding the civil party applications. So I am please asking you for the leave to make these introductory observations, which are rather general in character.
អញ្ជើញប៉ុន្តែសូមឲ្យខ្លីបានហើយ
The President, the civil party lawyer group 3, you may proceed, but please be brief.
ជាការងារមួយដូចជា
And we already discussed this at length yesterday, so I hope you will be brief this morning.
Question de manière assez étendue hier, donc nous invitons à la brièveté dans votre intervention.
Ms. Trus-Naprous, Mr. President, I indeed wish to make a few introductory observations regarding the applications of our civil parties, because there are elements there that indeed seem necessary to develop in a general manner. Two problems indeed are raised. The link with S21, and on the other hand, the second question is the kinship link, or let's say the proximity issue. So regarding point number one, I would like first to state in an introductory manner that I believe that it cannot be challenged that the S21 archives, the fact that the archives of S21 are not complete cannot be challenged. Some of them have disappeared, the proof being that in certain applications we only have a photograph, in other applications we have a name appearing on a list, in another application there might be a biography, and however we cannot bring together all of the elements. So this seems to me to be already an element that allows us to say that these archives are not complete. And the second element that allows me to say this are the observations made by certain witnesses. For example, David Chandler, who indicated, because he studied very much in depth these S21 archives, and David Chandler is telling us that these archives indeed are not complete, and he said in particular when he was heard regarding ERN 00361627, that some of the civil parties indicated the way that they had received access to this document, such as on August 18th when Antonia Tulong spoke about her cousin who was able to access these archives in 1979, whereas they were covered outside of Tulsleng in dust. So it is perfectly understandable that these archives indeed are not complete. So consequently, I believe that it is possible for us to say now, and this is what we are supporting as civil party lawyers, that it is not because we cannot find any traces of proximity links regarding our civil parties in the S21 archives, that these people have never been detained nor smashed at S21. And this is, Mr. President, in your honors, this is why I believe that your chamber will have to review the civil party applications and statements in order to assess their coherency and their logic, given the historical context, the specific historical context regarding these individual applications, and regarding as well the relevant evidence that we're able to gather, in particular during the investigation phase and during these hearings. And furthermore, regarding S21 again, we have often heard, or several times, the accused saying that that he did not accept as proprietary value a simple photograph at S21. And I'd like to state that it's not up to the accused to say if such evidence can be accepted or not. It is up to the chamber to say if indeed this evidence is admissible or not. And however, in order to avoid any kind of difficulties, the civil parties in our group, and this was the same for the civil parties in the other groups, we have asked the S21 Museum to certify the provenance of these photographs, and this is what we will be able, therefore, to review on a case-per-case basis. But we had indeed the provenance of these photographs certified by the museum. And on the other hand, it seems to us that that in certain applications we have a photograph, in others we have a name on a list, in others there is a biography, and I believe that indeed it is not necessary to require the accumulation of all of these elements from the S21 archives in order to provide in order to provide evidence regarding the fact that that person was detained and smashed at S21. And this is even more so the case that, sorry, Mr. President.
The President, could you please slow down a little bit for good record and interpretation?
Et également pour faciliter le travail des interprètes.
The President, it would be good if you can speak slower so that the interpreter can really fully follow what you are saying. The court officer, could you please check whether the civil party lawyer received the message from me?
Est-ce que on peut vérifier que vous avez bien reçu, vous avez bien compris ce que je viens de dire? Oui.
There's Ms. Trosnaprus. There's no problem, Mr. President. I have indeed understood what was said, and I apologize for my, let's say, for speaking so quickly. I'm going to try indeed to go a bit slower. And what I wanted to say was that the difficulties that we might encounter in our investigation of the S21 archives is linked to the fact that the victims maybe were not recorded under their real names. And knowing that these victims, following Khmer tradition, might have used the father's name, for example, or their grandfather's name, for example. Or even a revolutionary name, of which the civil parties might not be aware of, or at least for some of them. This is regarding point number 1 regarding S21. Now, regarding point number 2, that is to say, the existence of a kinship link or proximity link. Here again, I believe that it is important to indicate as an introduction that we must all take into account the historical context, the cultural context, and the economic and socio-economic context of this country. Indeed, certain civil parties cannot provide registration documents because they did not exist, or have disappeared. And the situation is even more difficult in certain communes, in certain districts, and in certain provinces. It's even more so the case. So therefore, it is important to take into account the difficult family situation and the precarious family situation of certain people as well. So I believe, therefore, that it is important to take into account all of these elements, and I believe that it is important at this level of the proceedings to recall rule number 87 of the internal rules, which states that evidence in criminal cases is free. In certain cases, we were able, and we can, again, provide probative elements regarding the kinship links or the proximity links and this via a competent institution, such as the mayor of a commune, for example. In other cases, we were able to put forth statements from people, parents, friends, neighbors, who certify these kinship links or these proximity links. And in other cases, it seems to us, and we'll see this on a case-per-case basis, that these statements come together in such a way that this link seems to us to be already established, logically established, without there being without it being necessary to perform extra investigations. And it seems here that these are useful elements for the ascertainment of truth. And we, of course, must still deal with the notion and the definition of what kinship means, of what proximity means. And indeed, the direction Article 3 to C states that psychological harm is liable to include the loss of relatives who were victims of these crimes, includes the loss of relatives who were victims of these crimes. And a relative can be a direct family member, but can also be a third party, a person who might have brought you up, a friend even. And I will mention a quote from Philippe Le Tourneau, a jurist, who in 1970 was, when he studied a ruling from the French Court of Cassation, which in fact had freed the list of people, opened the list of people who could act. So Philippe Le Tourneau indicated that the principle of reparation regarding relative is inflationist. So therefore I believe, or we believe, that regarding our group, and I believe that these elements are shared with the other groups, that it is the coherence and the logic behind the civil party statements that will, in these circumstances, allow the chamber to make a decision in favor of certain civil parties. That will have to be, whose suffering will have to be acknowledged, as well as their expectations. And in any case, we, of course, will let the chamber decide in all of its wisdom in the interest of the victims and for the ascertainment of the truth. This is, Mr. President, Your Honors, the observations that I wanted to provide as an introduction.
The President, the International Co-Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Mr. Dismail, thank you, Mr. President. Given that the co-prosecutors will not participate in the debate regarding each civil party, each individual civil party, we also wish to provide certain general observations in the same line of thought as what was stated by Ms. Trousse-Naprous, who therefore represents the civil parties of her group, and I agree. I imagine that the other civil party lawyers agree. Indeed, evidence is free, and it seems to us that this evidence that's also applied to, that also can be applied in Rule 23, should be appreciated in a reasonable manner by the Chamber, given the elements that are presented and given the coherency of these elements, and given the logic behind each of the statements in the civil party applications, as well as given other statements from the civil parties that might have also been included in the case file. Our point of view is also that we must take into account in this appreciation of the evidence, take into account a certain number of elements, some of which were already mentioned by the civil party lawyer. And the first element is, well, the facts go back to 30 years, which explains that for many civil parties it was impossible for them to preserve documents that would have been, of course, useful today. These civil parties often, for those of that have been heard, often explained that during the Khmer Rouge period, practically all of the photographs of their relatives or of people that were close to them were destroyed. And unfortunately, they cannot, of course, be presented today.
insister également sur le fait que les archives de S21 sont effectivement incomplètes.
I would like to insist on the fact that the archives are incomplete, that numerous documents could not be found, others have been destroyed, and others still have deteriorated over time because they were stored under poor conditions. These are the documents, however, which made it possible for the Office of the Co-Prosecutors to prepare a combined list of S21 prisoners, which is therefore based on the biographies, the prisoner lists, the list of executed prisoners, and the photographs that were collected. This list is necessarily incomplete, and the accused, in fact, accepted this on several occasions, particularly during the investigation phase, and the numerous names that are found in this list do not reflect the actual reality of the number of persons who perished in S21. The figure that we have records for is far below reality, and thus I am surprised when defense counsel on several occasions have stated that because of the fact that the name of a person is not found on that combined list, there is no evidence of any kind concerning the fact that that person was brought into or executed at S21. It seems to me that this is an attitude which leads to drawing hasty conclusions from the absence of a name on the list when we know it is incomplete. As
The President, please be seated. The chamber is now back in session. The chamber would like now to give the floor to the defense counsel to continue with the observations on the objections.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Defense has made good use of the break in order to study the different documents that were submitted to us this morning by one of the civil party groups. Therefore, I hope that you will authorize me, Mr. President, to work back up from the chronological order that I was following this morning and to discuss E230. I hadn't discussed it. I had left it by the side, if you want, because I wanted to take the time to examine the documents that we received. Well, as it happens, in spite of these documents, the defense remains on its position and lets its objection stand. Indeed, the plaintiff alleges that her two brothers and sister-in-law were detained and killed in S21. If it is the case that the plaintiff and the victims have a somewhat similar name, nevertheless, we are of the opinion that the kinship is not secured in the documentation submitted. And though the plaintiff submitted a series of photographs that have been filed, these photographs appear to us to be of an insufficient nature to demonstrate that those persons were indeed detained in S21.
The President, the Civil Party Council Group 3, you can respond.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, in this file, this is Mrs. Nguyen Kim Earn, who lost her two brothers in Tor Sueng, as well as the wife of Truan Brong. I believe that the connection with S21 is unchallengeable. Indeed, we have the photographs that were filed in the hearing in a first stage, the photographs originating from S21. These photographs, since they were questioned, led us to get in touch with the management of S21 and obtain a certification of the authenticity and provenance of these photographs. Indeed, we received an affidavit from the deputy head of the documentary repository of Trolsling Museum, attesting that the photographs of prisoners detained in S21 under numbers 009884. And Mr. President, if you allow me, I will also be looking through these photographs, because the affidavit also mentions issues relating to another case, and I wouldn't want the two to become confused. So, as far as this specific case is concerned, the number is 02045 and number 02147. Photographs which we have here and which were handed over to the defense. The photographs as well as documents will be forwarded to the defense by way of a motion submitted to your tribunal, to your chamber. We would like to add further that in this specific case there is also an S21 biography concerning Chang. And there is an S21 biography which you will find under reference ERN. Well, I noted ERN 013. Excuse me. Let me give you the Khmer reference 0027331 0027331. I believe that in effect, there is no problem whatever in establishing the connection with S21. We have photographs and we have a biography. With regard to kinship, in this case, we have two affidavits which have already been filed. And the ERN reference, Khmer 0027330100273301 and 00273307. Two affidavits from persons, Ching Im and Kem Tol, attesting to the kinship between our client and the brothers. As for the harm suffered by the client, of course, it is unquestionable. The only kinship connection between the parties, being so close, automatically implies that there is suffering inflicted on that person due to the loss of her brothers and her sister-in-law. Regarding the sister-in-law of our client, there is also a photograph. It seems that this is a photograph that comes from Pressar, from S24. Well, these are the observations we wanted to make with regard to this particular case, Mr. President. Thank you.
En ce qui concerne la partie civile référencée sous le numéro
With regard to civil party reference E2/41, a civil party presumes that her grandfather, Mr. Puig Kim, was killed in Tuol Sleng because the civil party states that they saw the photograph of the latter in Tuol Sleng. The defense can only note the fact that the civil party did not file this picture. It's not joined in the file, and that the civil party also supplies no evidence that Mr. Kim, the victim, was indeed her grandfather. No document emanating from Tuol Sleng has been supplied. Lastly, we must observe that the name of Mr. Pro Kim cannot be found in the list of prisoners of S21.
President, the Civil Party Lawyer Group 1, you take the floor. Tisrina. Mr. President, I would like to respond regarding Civil Party E2/41 Sin Sinet. The documents regarding the prisoners at S21 is here with us. We have obtained this document of the person and the photo to identify his identification with the placard number 7 hanging underneath his photo. And the civil party pointed to this photo that the photo found at S21 when she paid the visit to the vicinity. She saw the photo and found the identification, identity documents in relation to that victim. And these documents have been collected from DCCAM website. And we will submit these documents at a later date with further clarification from the S21 archive. And regarding this grandfather of Sin Sinet, we have already got the documents, and Cincinnati herself has obtained the national identification card and the birth certificate and the book of residence. Before 1975, before the Khmer Rouge regime, she was sent to live with her grandparents in Kampong Saum. She was only 7 years old back then. She was very close to the grandparents, and she treated them as her own parents, and her grandparents treated her like their own daughter, not granddaughter. And the civil party also indicated that, in the application, that she had lived with the grandparent in Kampong Saum in Wil Ring. And having compared and verified the document, point 5 here, which is detailing the information of the person who actually worked as the smith, the smith in Kampong Saum. So this information is very consistent with the account of the civil party who said she lived with her grandparent in Kampong Saum, and I hope this information is able to substantiate the application. She also found another photo and biography in relation to the grandfather, and for that reason she has searched for the family members, and we can find her article in the Search for the Truth magazine of the 1999 issue. So with this information we can conclude that she has been searching for the lost family members, and it has been rather difficult for her to really establish the documents to prove that she has a relation with the grandparents, because she has not obtained other related documents. However, I believe that since she has already published the search information for the whereabouts of the relatives, and that the recent document obtained, they can help support her application. The President of the Defense Council, you may now proceed further.
Civil Party E2/62 states that her two brothers are alleged to have been arrested and killed in Tuol-Sleng, and she files a picture of herself taken in Tuol-Sleng and that of another person whom she has identified as being her brother. However, no other element in the case file gives us any further evidence with regard to kinship. Furthermore, the defense would like to note that since 1976, more specifically March 1976, Tamak, who was in charge of the southeastern zone from which the plaintiff originates, was no longer sending anyone to S21.
The President, the Civil Party Lawyer Group 1, you take the floor. Tisrina, Mr. President, thank you. Regarding Civil Party E2/62, him, mum, I would like now to establish the linkages between this application, this applicant and S21. We have obtained the photo number 217. In relation to this photo, we also obtained the source of the document on the internet, from the database of the DC Cam, and the document states that this person photo has been obtained from Tuol-Sleng, and that the person in this photo was the person who detained at Tuol-Sleng, and this is another piece of clear information about the relative of the civil party who proves that the photo is the person who is her brother and detained at S21. Regarding the kinship, this person also indicated that there were two siblings who lost during the regime, as the Defense Council stated, but they could only find one person, Sang Kum Lien, who already died. They found this information about Kum Lien. However, the identification card states the civil party as him mom. But in the birth certificate, the names is spelled differently, although it shares the same sounds. I mean, the name could still be pronounced as him mom. So after the Khmer Rouge regime, some registrars who survived the regime were not able to really register the correct names of the applicants, and since my client is not well or rather literate, then it was difficult to really produce or to tell the registrar the correct name. That's why I think this point should also be well considered by your honors. And Sang Kum Lieng and Sang Kum Leng died, but only Kum Lieng was found in S21, and only his photo remains. And the name of the civil party, Him Mom, is correct in the identification card, and the name she uses for her civil party application. However, in the birth certificate, the name or the surname has been changed for several family members. For example, Kum Leng surname would be changed to Sang because he took after the father's surname. So I think these kind of discrepancies in the uses of name has been contributed to the change of regime, and that people may have changed their names, or maybe the registrars have mistakenly written their names on the official papers. And sometimes individuals may have changed their name arbitrarily without even informing the local authority about this intention. And it is very common in Cambodian society that this kind of thing happens. And I believe that we can actually produce further documents to support these relation between our applicant, the civil party applicant to the person in the photo. And I believe that if she has not known this person, she would not be able to even link the photo to the life story, and that to the moment she had one lived with and them, and that she was moved to even see the photo. So I believe that it is genuine enough that the civil party has clear kinship with the person in the photo, and I would like to beg the court to accept the civil party as applicant as the civil party in the proceedings, although some civil parties may find it difficult to bring the supporting documents to support their civil party applications, because during the regime several documents have been damaged, or even the S21 documents have been used to wrap some kind of Cambodian cake, and that not always sure. It is not always sure that all the documents obtained at S21 still maintained at S21, because several documents have been missing. And During the Democratic Cambodia regime, the regime which spied on everyone, which exercised their surveillance on every individual because they were suspicious, and that the people were fearful and they would not dare keep any documents because they were afraid that those documents could be used to implicate them in the arrest. So a lot of documents were destroyed, so people were left without any trace of good document to support their identity. The President, the Defense Council, you may now proceed.
Je m'adresse au Conseil de la Défense et vous invite à passer au cas suivant.
La partie civile E2
Civil Party E2/63
l'état du fait que son beau-frère, Monsieur
states that her brother-in-law, Mr. Peng Hui, is alleged to have been detained and executed in S21. In spite of the documentation which we received this morning, the defense nevertheless feels that these elements are not sufficient to establish a proof of kinship between plaintiff and victim, and furthermore, these elements do not establish proof that the victim was detained in S21, and defense therefore can only observe that the name of Pleng Hui is not to be found in the list of S21 prisoners.
The President, Civil Party Lawyer Group 3, you may now proceed.
Partie civile numéro 3, je vous en prie.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, Mr.
Nous
President.
avons en effet remis ce matin
Indeed, this morning we
la défense
handed over to the
un
defense
nouveau document,
a
soit
new document
une attestation
which is in the form of an affidavit from the mayor of the municipality of our client attesting kinship with her brother-in-law.
bien entendu.
Of course,
Estimons pour notre part
we feel
que cet élément est
that
probant
this is probative evidence with regard to establishing kinship. As for the connection with S21, indeed, it is persons we did not find in the lists in spite of all our efforts and research. And the information, the only information that we have regarding this person is based on the indications given by our client herself, who stated in her statement that in 1978 someone had sent to her a picture of her father and brother, both hands shackled, both feet shackled with chains, and their stomachs slit open. They both died like animals, and this is the statement that we have. I leave it up to the court to rule on this specific case.
The President, the Defense Council, you may now proceed.
Je m'adresse à la défense et vous invite à passer au cas suivant.
Ms. Canizares, the Civil Party E2/64 alleges that her uncle, Mr. Shekbaro, and her aunt, Ms. Goodform, as well as 5 of her cousins, were detained and killed at Tul Sleng. However, there is no evidence in the file that proves the kinship between the plaintiff and the victims. And in the same way, the defense believes that the documents that are included are not sufficient to provide the proof that the victims were killed at Tul Sleng. And the civil party mentions a photograph, and this photograph was never produced until yet. And there's also mention biography of Mr. Cheb Baro, but in fact it is a document that was hand copied by the civil party, and that therefore is not a document coming from S21. And here, once again, the defense was only able to notice that Mr. Chebaro's name is not on the prisoners list of S21.
The President, the civil party lawyer group 2, you may now proceed. Mr. Kong Pisai, Mr. President, thank you. I would like to shed light on the civil party applicant E2/64, Nyap Kum Sria. These victims include only Kumpan, and Kumpan husband was Chiep Baro. Chiep Baro was the biological brother of Chiep Nyap, and Chiep Nyap were related to Nyap Kum Sri, and Nyap Kum Sri is the civil party applicant. Nyap Kum Sri was the nephew of Nyap Baro. At that time, Kut Pan, who was the wife of Chia Baro, had 5 siblings, and they were detained and smashed. But there has not been any document to prove that Chia Baro was detained at S21. But there is a list of prisoners at S21 which contain the name Kut Pan, who was the wife of Chia Baro. So there is another list of prisoners who was smashed at S21, and Madame Kut Pan, the wife of Chia Baro, was also found in that list. So Chia Baro actually got married to Kut Pan, and the wife who was actually seen in the list of execution at S21. And I had already told the court the relationship between these people, so I would like the chamber to consider Nyap Kum Sri as the civil party. The President, the Defense Counsel, you may now continue.
Le Président, je m'adresse à la défense et je vous invite à passer au cas suivant.
Ms. Canizares, Civil Party E2/65 alleges that an uncle died in 1977 at S21, and we do not even have the name of the uncle in question, so therefore the defense believes that the proof of kinship and the proof that the uncle was detained at S21 is not established.
The President, the civil party group 3, you may continue.
Ms. Trusnaprus, Mr. President, it seems that we're in a very specific case here, and it seems that this perfectly reveals what might happen in certain family. Indeed, since we have no document, we therefore met very recently our client, And we met her indeed to establish the facts. And it happens to be that this person received in orders from her family challenging her civil party application, and she does not want to disappoint her family. So under these circumstances, we told her and we let her know what were her possibilities, either to waive her civil party application or to stand by it. And this was indicated to her, and she asked to think about it. So therefore, within this week, she will present to us her final decision, and in that case, I will let you know, Mr. President, my client's decision.
The President's the Defense Council, you may continue.
Ms. Canizares, E270, states that her uncle, Mr. Sok U, was killed at S21. And however, we do not have, we have no element regarding the civil party that can substantiate the kinship or that can prove that the victim was indeed detained at S21. That was Mr. Sok Bun, corrects the interpreter.
Consult. Good morning, Mr. President, Your Honors, ladies and gentlemen. Related to the civil party application E2/70, in which she lodged the application because the uncle was arrested and killed at Tulsline prison. We have tried to research to find the documents related to his detention at S21, as well as relevant documents that could provide us further information. We have tried to look at the list of the prisoners by the Office of the Co-Prosecutors, and we found a name, Sok Bun, at number 9556, but when we examine the detailed information for that prisoner and compare it to information of the victim in the complaint made by our civil party, the information is not the same. I do not know how the information was contradictory, but I would like to reserve the right for the Chamber to make decision. If we analyze the information provided by my clients to the Chamber in the application, we see that in early 78, Ruan, the 103 sector chairman, called the village chief and sub-district chiefs and people to a meeting under the guards of armed guards, and no one was allowed to move out, even for relieving themselves. After the meeting, Prom Hong, Kung, Chit, Chun, Ri, and the uncle of the civil party, Sok Bun, who were the village chief and sub-district chiefs during the Khmer Rouge regime. After we reached that segment and analyzed the information received by the Chamber, we could conclude that the Rohas sub-district, Rovieng district of Pravi here, was in a sector in the north zone, which was subject to internal screening during that time. The accused also acknowledged that during the internal screening, those who were the targets for the arrest to S21 were those who worked in the districts and sub-districts levels. So we believe that the information provided to us is connected to the event that happened at that time, and it is also related to the information received by the Chamber. In addition, in relation to the kinship between my civil party and the uncle Sokbun. After receiving information of the objections by the defense counsel, I contacted my client and requested for clarification of kinship, and we are still waiting for the response, and we hope that we will be able to receive necessary information and document within this week. And once we receive the document, we would submit it to the chamber for decision, and this is my observation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Voilà mon exposé. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
The President, the Defense Counsel, you may now continue.
Président, je m'adresse au Conseil de la Défense et vous invite à passer au cas suivant.
Ms. Canizares, regarding civil party E2/71, which alleges that her brother-in-law died at S21 in 1976, just as in the previous case, there is no element in the file that allows us to substantiate the kinship between the plaintiff and the victim, and allowing us to consider as well that the victim was indeed detained at S21. And in addition, the name of this victim does not appear on the prisoners list at S21. Ms. Trousnankos, yes, Mr. President. Here again, we asked from the mayor of the commune she lives in for an affidavit regarding the kinship, and we are still waiting for it. And we were indeed asked to receive this document before the end of this week. So I hope that before the end of this week, I will be able to put this document before the chamber. Now, regarding the link with S21, as the defense indicated, indeed, we were not able to find the name of this victim on the S21 lists. However, there's a certain amount of coherency in the account, because Niels Seng was arrested for an offense that he would have committed in the context of his work, because it was held against him that he left without asking for permission from his superiors. And we know that he was brought to Salachen, and then afterwards he was transferred to Toul Sleng. It therefore seems that in this specific case, it seems that the statement from our client allows us to consider that indeed this person was detained and smashed at S21. And here again, we will let the court rule on this.
President, the Defense Counsel, you may now continue.
Ms. Canizares, E2/76, joined as a civil party following the demise of her older brother, Ung Koang, which she alleges occurred at Toul Sleng in 78 or beginning of 79. Now, beyond the fact that the victim and the plaintiff carry the same name, we have no other element that allows us to substantiate the kinship between these two people. Now, regarding the second issue, the fact that the victim was allegedly detained at S21, the only evidence that we have in our file is a biography of Mr. Ung Oan, but that is hard to authenticate as coming from S21. And here again, it is even more so the case that Mr. Ung Kwang's name is not on the prisoners list at S21.
Much Swanari, thank you for the clarifications by the Defense Counsel in response to that regarding the event whether Mr. Ung Kom was the brother of Ung Woon and that he was detained at the S21 or not. We had a brief biography of Mr. Ung Kom. It was an S21 document. It is in the document E2/76.4. Here we look at the event from the beginning as described by the civil party in the complaint in 1974. In Chukru sub-district, Kampong Swai district, Kampong Thom, the civil party provided information that the brother was arrested by Lunal soldiers and forced to be a soldier, and he was sent to the battlefield. It is consistent with the event at the time, and there was a fight between the Lunal and the Khmer Rouge soldiers. It was also observed that in early 76, the civil party provided information that the brother went to meet him. We did not know the situation of the meeting at the time, whether he secretly went to meet the civil party or not. And then he went to the battlefield and reappeared. And Ung Kom went to meet his mother and told his mother that he used to be a Lunal soldier and that he would be sent to Phnom Penh and he would be detained there in Phnom Penh. And from that day he disappeared. His family, after the liberation, found that document. So we would like to submit the documents to the chamber for consideration. Secondly, in relation to the kinship between the civil party and the victim Ung Kom, from the evidentiary document provided by the civil party, in relation to the ID card, the victim information form, and the biography he provided, and the biography of Ung Kom from S21, in addition to the interview made by the DC camp with his mother, we can conclude that the information related to the address is the same. It was the same address provided in the information of Ung Kom as the one provided in the interview provided by his mother, as well as the information of the address mentioned in the ID card. So we can see the kinship between the civil party and the victim Ung Kom. In addition, in the biography of Ung Kom, we can see that he said his mother was Hul Soon, and in the interview between his mother and DC Cam, the name was the same. And his mother also said that presently she lived with her daughter. And this is a factor for our consideration of the existence of kinship between the civil party and the victim Ung Kom. Also, in order to clarify the kinship, the council requested to the civil party to make additional document to prove the kinship. Thank you, Mr. President. The President, the Defense Counsel, you may now continue.
Ms. Canizares, following case is E2/77, and for which we practically have no element at all, whether regarding the kinship or whether regarding the victim's presence at S21. And here again, I will take the liberty of specifying that the victim's name is also not on the prisoners list at S21.
Monsieur le Président, sauf erreur.
Alain Werner, Mr. President, unless I'm mistaken, E277 was not listed by the defense lawyers, unless I am mistaken. So this can explain why we might be a little bit surprised. So if we could please receive a bit of clarification regarding this.
The President, the Defense Council, may you respond to that?
Répondre à cette observation.
Ms. Canizares, unless I'm mistaken, Mr. President, I believe that the civil party E277 was supposed to be initially heard by the chamber and that person renounced. This is why, since we did not hear her, so therefore the defense was not able to put forth its observations regarding this civil party. Well, this is why I took the liberty of including it among the civil parties that have not yet been heard.
The President, in the case of E2/77, this civil party was one of the civil parties selected to make statements before the chamber, but the civil party waived the right to appear before the chamber. Therefore, the civil party was not challenged by the Defense Council. Yesterday, it was clearly stated the inclusion of the E2/77 by the Defense Council onto the list of the civil parties. They objected, as this E2/77 waives the right to appear before the chamber. Therefore, the civil party council, can you provide any information regarding this, or what is your position?
Mr. Alain Werner, Mr. President, as far as I understand, well, as far as I understand, that this civil party belongs to group number 2. And if this is the case, I am not able to provide information.
The President, the Civil Party Council Group 2. Can you proceed? Council. Mr. President, I apologized as I did not receive this information early enough, so I cannot respond at this stage. The President, Mr. Council, when do you think you can respond? Council, I will respond once I receive sufficient information, Mr. President. The Chamber, the President, the Chamber is putting this matter before it today, and then tomorrow morning, that will be the last time. Actually, the matter regarding this civil party was clearly stated. Due to the changes made by that civil party involving the right to appear before the chamber in making a statement, and the Defense Council considered that if the civil party were to appear before the chamber, then they could question or challenge that civil party before the chamber. Therefore, the only time that you can provide your position is only today and tomorrow morning only. So please be ready to proceed. And the Chamber has the view that it is appropriate for you to do so tomorrow morning. Council, thank you, Mr. President. The President, the Defense Council, you may now proceed with your next challenge.
Ms. Canizares, E2/81 is intervening on behalf of her father, Mr. Enteat, and her grandfather, Mr. M. Sabin. And despite the document that were provided to us this morning, the defense views these documents, that is to say, a photograph, and we do not know whose photograph it is, well, considers that these documents are not sufficient to substantiate the kinship between the plaintiff and the victim. And in the same way, there is no element in the file substantiating the fact that the victim was detained at S21. But in order to clarify, however, the defense would like to stress that on August 12, 2009, documents were addressed to it, but however, these documents, which only exist in Khmer, do not involve the victims that were brought up, but seem to regard a great uncle, Mr. Pokmen. So that is to say, neither the father nor the grandfather, and whether it is the father or the grandfather or the great uncle, there is none of these three names are on the prisoners' lists at S21.
The President, Council, you may proceed. Mochswanari. Thank you, Mr. President. Before I respond to the challenge raised by the Defense Council, I would like to state about the kinship between the three victims and my client. And I would like to provide an explanation and the reason that my client decides to waive his rights to be heard by the Chamber. At that time, in his file, even though we tried to research for supporting documents, we failed to locate any. That's why we made the decision to waive the rights to be heard by the Chamber. However, recently, by the research of my client of the document at the Genocidal Museum at Tulsi Lane, he located a document that is a biography of the detainee, and we submitted the document to the Chamber. It's E2/81.3 ERN 00362274. It is a biography of the detainee at Tulsi Lane, and my client verified that the kinship is stated in E2/81.2. That's the victim, Put Moi, in the biography of the detainee, was the grandfather. What is lacking at the moment is the document verifying that the client is a kinship of Pok Moi, and I requested my clients to make such a document, and that we would receive the document next week, upon which we would submit it to the Chamber for consideration. Later on, once we found that document, the Council did further research, and we looked at the database of the Office of the Co-Prosecutor. We found a photograph which was similar to the photo of the father of the client, Thought. With the President's leave, I would like to show the similarity between the photo found in the document of the co-prosecutor and the document and the photograph provided by my client to prove that it is the photos of the same person. The President, yes, the Chamber grants this opportunity. Court officer, can you project the photographs on the slide? Counsel, I would like to inform the chamber that this photograph was printed from a small photo from the document. If it is difficult to view, I would like to seek assistance from the AV units to project the file, the electronic file from the document instead. Counsel, this is the photo of the father of the civil party, Thought, and my client will provide the certification of kinship, and probably it will be in our hand next week. This is the photo of the father of my client that we found in the database file of the Office of the Co-Prosecutors. The President, the court officer, you can remove the photos. Counsel, thank you, Mr. President. These photographs have been provided to the Defense Counsel for their examination, and we will submit all these documents to the chamber either today or tomorrow, and we are in the process of preparing these documents to be ready for the submission. On another point, if we look at the information provided by the civil party in her application, we could see the consistencies of the information in relation to the series of historical events that the chamber have received through the hearings and the proceedings so far. In that document, the civil party said that they lived in the Romihait district in Svay Rieng. That location, that is the Romihait district, under the leadership of Sao Pham. And that location was also a target of internal screening at the time. That person was arrested by the CPK. And why the CPK did not arrest his subordinates? We could see that the grandfather of the client, the civil party, Sao Bind, was forced to join the Khmer Rouge military under the leadership of Sao Pham, and the father, Phom, as shown in the photographs, was the chief of the security at that time. Later on, in 1977, there was the people from the Southwest who entered that group, and people were arrested by the Southwest group. One day, the grandfather of the civil party, as well as the father, were called to a meeting at the Romihait sub-district office, where they were arrested. At that time, the position and the role of this grandfather and the father of the civil party, they held the roles within the Romihait sub-district and district. Also, from the information provided by my client after the arrest of the grandfather and the father, the Southwest group started to evacuate the best people. And there were 2 or 3 stages of evacuation. We can see that the information provided by the civil party is consistent and credible, and we would like to submit all the informations and documents to the Chamber for decision for my client's civil party application. Thank you. The President, the Defense Council, you may now proceed with your next challenge.
En ce qui concerne la partie civile, E2 barre de fraction.
Concerning civil party 2/82, there is very little in the case file. Nothing to substantiate a kinship between a plaintiff and victim, nothing to demonstrate that the victim was in S21, and further, the name of the victim again cannot be found on the list of S21 prisoners.
Thank you, Mr. President. As my international colleague raised from the beginning in her preliminary observation, which was also supported by the co-prosecutors, the list of the prisoners prepared by the Office of the co-prosecutors is not an ultimate definite list. That means it does not cover all the names of the prisoners at S21. Secondly, based on the Rule 87, evidence can be provided in the criminal case by all means. So, the Chamber can consider all the relevant information provided by the civil party in their complaints. This civil party, named Mom Sothir, he lost his mother, Sam Sok Lim, during the Khmer Rouge reign. During the evacuation of people from Phnom Penh, if we look at the role of his mother, she was the former staff of the Filipino embassy, and they wanted the family to live in the Philippines, but it was obstructed and by the bombardment and by the ultimate fall on the 17th April 75 that they could not go to the airport on time. In the complaint, the information states that while on the journey, the mother protested the Khmer Rouge soldiers that why making such a revolution when people were evacuated from Phnom Penh. In my role, I should be placed into a vehicle and not to walk on the street. And she added that she wanted to work in Phnom Penh in order to transform that vicious regime. And then she was sent to Phnom Penh. We cannot consider where would she be taken to Phnom Penh in her status as she openly protested against the Khmer Rouge. So from the information provided by the civil party to the Chamber, we learned in details in relation to the principle of smashing by the CPK, and the client also said, and the accused also said that S21 is a criminal mechanism of the CPK policy. Besides smashing the enemy, they would also try to find the treacherous link through torture during the interrogation to extract the confession. So based on such information, the mother was sent to Phnom Penh. Maybe she was not killed immediately. Probably she was being tortured and interrogated to find further links. And this information is incredible. And I would like to submit all these informations to the Chamber for examination and decision. And we will try to look for further information And we reserve the right to submit further information if we find any. And also in response to the Defense Counsel on the issue of kinship, I requested my client to prove the kinship, and I will wait for response. And once we receive the response, it will be submitted accordingly to the parties and to the chamber. Thank you. The President, now it is time for adjournment for lunch. And the schedule for today's hearing has been changed as it was required and as the chamber announced this morning. For this afternoon, the chamber cannot hold the hearing as the judges have to hold internal meetings to resolve and discuss certain urgent matters. Therefore, today's proceeding is adjourned today, and it will resume tomorrow morning starting from 9 a.m. Security guard, take the accused back to the detention facility and bring him back to the chamber tomorrow morning before 9 a.m. The hearing is now adjourned. All rise, says the greffier. The President, the International Co-Prosecutor, you can continue now.
As for the extracts of civil registries, we need to take into account of the state in which these registers are, whether past ones or present ones. And all of these elements plead in favor of the admissibility of other elements of evidence that can establish identity or authenticate documents relative to identity or to kinship with the victims of S-21. Thus, I believe that one could take into account acts confirming birth certificates or documents having been prepared by mayors, or even the testimony of witnesses who can establish the reality of an identity. Finally, our suggestion, Mr. President, because to my knowledge the Chamber has not yet set time limits for Council for the civil parties to collect and compile all of these documents. Our suggestion is that if it is the case in today's debate on each individual case, Council for the civil parties tell you that a certain number of documents are in the process of being compiled but cannot produce at today's hearing, our suggestion to the Chamber would be that a time limit, a final time limit, be set for the collection and compilation of these documents in order, with regard to this last batch of documents that needs to be produced and filed, a last swift debate may take place prior to the end of proceedings. These are the observations that we intended to make on a preliminary basis, and I believe that we will have no observations to make during the discussion concerning individual cases. Thank you.
The President, the Defense Counsel, you may proceed. Cast a vote. Thank you, Mr. President. The President, the floor is now given to the Civil Party Counsel. Civil Party Council. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a council representing Civil Party Group 2 and 4. First of all, I am in agreement with the Civil Party Council Group 3. And I also would like to provide my submission to the Chamber regarding the kinship of the civil parties to the victims of S21 office and the difficulty in proving such kinship. For instance, one of my clients in the document E2/35, the client has a nephew who died at S21, and there is also a photograph. And this client was objected by the defense counsel. The reason is that the parents of the victim also passed away. The President, Mr. Counsel, you are reminded that you should right now make an overall observation, and for each particular civil party, you will have your turn to respond to the objections that will be raised by the defense counsel on an individual basis. And right now, the floor is given to you to make general observation. Counsel, thank you, Mr. President. Then I will wait to respond to the defense counsel. The Chamber would like now to give the floor to the defense counsels to make their observation or objection on an individual cases for the civil party applications, says the President. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am a defense counsel for the accused, and I would like to make my general observation before I raise the issue on an individual basis. It is my observation that the accused has acknowledged all the crimes committed at S21, where 12,380 people died at that location. And I am the defense counsel, and I am here ready, waiting for all the civil parties' applications. I do not have any objection to that. However, to be eligible as a civil party, there are certain criteria that needs to be made in order for it to be legitimate. First, the first criterion would be whether the person fits the criterion as a civil party. That is, whether the person is a husband, a wife, a son or a daughter, a mother or father of the victim. For such a case, the civil party would agree to it. But if someone says he is a nephew, or that the relatives, 6 or 7 relatives died, and probably even not died at S21, then my client and I cannot accept it. Secondly, to be a civil party, all evidence has to be clearly shown that the victim is actually victimized at S21. And I do not require every single piece of documentary evidence. However, at least amongst those documents, there is some of H21's document, for example, a photo with a serial number placed in front. And if the photo cannot be found, then at least there is a confession. The confession made at that location. Then we will accept it. It's as simple as that. And if the confession cannot be found or the photograph is not available, then they can turn through the list of the prisoners. So there is a list of the prisoners. And if the name is there, then we would accept one of these three criteria. And if nothing fits into the three criteria that I just raised, then we, the defense team, cannot accept it. And that's why we objected several civil party applications because of these grounds. And this is my general observation, and I would like my International Defense Council to raise the issues related to individual application. The President's International Defense Council, you may now proceed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before Council Canizares comes in to set things in order, I would like to make a few preliminary observations myself. I wish to thank Council for the civil parties to have opened this preliminary debate, which I believe is extremely important for this part of the proceedings. And I am very sensitive also to the statement made by the co-prosecutors. I am pleased that the co-prosecutors have decided to intervene at this point in the arguments, because we have reached a very important point in our pleadings. We have always said that from the moment that the accused acknowledges responsibility, we have always said that we would be open to civil party applications made by persons who were smashed at S21. However, as Councillor Kersavood has just recalled, there are rules of law. And in Latin, one says, dura lex, sed lex. The law is harsh, but it is the law. We are not here in a forum other than one dedicated to justice, and we must respect the law. The NGOs have been working on these files for a very long time, and it is therefore up to the NGOs and, forgive me, to counsel for the civil parties to produce the minimum elements that will make it possible for the chamber at the end of the day to decide whether such and such a person does indeed fit in with the criteria required for a civil party application. And I would like to respectfully draw the attention of everyone at this point to the fact that we are the first international tribunal to have accepted civil parties. We have fought over a period of 15 years in order to arrive at the situation which we are experiencing today, because until now, victims were not civil parties before international courts and tribunals. We have obtained this result, but please, let us not spoil this result.
n'annulons pas tous les
Let us
efforts
not
que nous avons faits pour
cancel
arriver là.
all the efforts that we've made in order to achieve this.
Certaines parties civiles, la semaine dernière,
Some
sont sorties de
of the
leur
civil
rôle de partie
parties
civile dans
last
cette
week
audience
went beyond their role as civil
ont dû
parties
être
during
rappelés à
the
l'ordre
hearings and had to be warned
par le président,
by the President
par la défense.
and by Defense Counsel.
Nous sommes en train
We
de
are
réaliser un progrès
in the
considérable,
process
tous
of
ensemble,
making
dans la
considerable
justice
progress
pénale
all
internationale.
together in the field of international
Et nous
criminal
sommes donc
justice.
condamnés
And therefore,
à l'excellence.
we are bound to
Et
achieve
je me tourne vers
excellence.
vous, mes
And I
confrères de la
turn
partie
to you,
civile,
dear colleagues
c'est
from
à vous
the civil parties.
d'apporter
It is
les
up
éléments
to you
juridiques
to supply the juridical
permettre
elements that will
que l'on
make
accueille
it
ou non
possible
des personnes comme partie civile.
to
Vous savez très
consider
bien
that certain persons
eu
are
dans ce
or are
pays
not civil
des
parties.
milliers,
You know that in this country
dizaines
there
de
have been
milliers de morts,
thousands, tens of thousands of dead.
notamment dans 196 prisons
And
du pays.
inter alia in 196
Certaines
countries,
familles
prisons in
peuvent
the
de
country.
bonne foi
And some families may,
imaginer
in
que
good faith, imagine
leur auteur, leur père, leur
that
fils
their
mort
father,
à
their son,
S21,
their mentor died in
et on pourrait
S21,
s'apercevoir que ça
and
n'était
one
pas à S21
might find
dans
out
une
that it
autre
wasn't
prison.
in S21, but in another prison.
Qu'aurions-nous fait alors?
What would we have done then?
Nous aurions fait tout sauf
We
du droit.
would have done everything
Nous sommes là
except practicing
dans
law.
une enceinte de
We are
justice.
here in a forum dedicated to handing down justice. There are rules which have been recalled by Council Karsavut, and in my preliminary observation, I intended to insist on the absolute necessity to respect these rules. It is in the interest of the law, and it is in the interest of the civil parties themselves.
Nous voulons
Because
poursuivre
if
dans d'autres tribunaux
in the future
internationaux
we wish in
l'avancée
further
que représente
and other
l'accueil
international
des parties
tribunals
civiles
further
dans
the
ce
progress that has been successfully achieved in this tribunal with regard to civil party applications. Well, Mr. President, the defense has already given a case-by-case list yesterday concerning these applications. In the meantime, we have received new elements of evidence, which in fact is congruent with the observations of Judge Cartwright, which is that at every moment of the debate there are new elements coming, and thus the defense must be allowed to respond at any and at all times. Therefore, instead of going through everything that has already been said yesterday, perhaps we could ask Counsel Canizares, who keeps the list updated, perhaps we could ask her to tell us which are the case files for which we received information yesterday and where we believe that adequate information has been supplied. The Chamber, of course, will have the final decision on this. But on the basis of information that we received yesterday, we can already tell you that some of these cases have been endowed with sufficient elements of evidence. Perhaps I can now give the floor to Counsel Canizares. Thank you, Mr. President.
The President, the Defense Counsel, you can proceed.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. Effectivement,
Thank you, Mr. President. Indeed, as my colleague François Roux has just indicated to the Chamber, new documents were produced by the civil parties from group number 1, who yesterday gave us new documents concerning 5 applicants. But also this morning, from group number 3, as group number 3 gave us a certain number of documents concerning 4 of the civil party applicants. So, Mr. President, if you will allow me, Perhaps I could make a brief preliminary comment as well, as far as I'm concerned, insofar as the Chamber will surely understand quite clearly that at the time when your hearing was about to start this morning, we received new elements of evidence, and it is somewhat difficult for us to take the time to assess their value. The hearing has already begun. And though these documents are indeed in our possession, I must admit to you that I haven't had the time to examine all of them, and more specifically to discuss with my client issues of relevance with regard to these documents. In fact, this brings to my mind an observation that was made yesterday afternoon by one of the counsel from Group 1, who reminded the defense that it was up to the defense from the initial hearing to submit its observations regarding the civil party applications. Well, my observation in this regard will perhaps seem to you to be somewhat candid, to use a term that was used by my colleague Werner yesterday following one of my observations, but the Chamber, I'm sure, will understand quite easily that it was rather difficult at the time, a time when many documents had not yet been produced, very difficult to be able to say in a clear and definitive manner what the position of the defense was with regard to the civil party applications. In any event, given the elements of proof that we have received yesterday at the end of the hearings, and elements of evidence which in fact have been produced exclusively in Khmer language, which were translated neither into English nor into French, we have been able to consider that with regard to two of the plaintiffs of Group 1, these elements enable us today to state that we no longer have an objection regarding the civil party application of these two persons. That is D25/20, as well as civil party E2/57. However, we stand on our objections regarding the other civil parties, with the reservation, of course, that defense will have opportunity to examine the documents that were produced and handed to us this morning.
The President, the Defense Council do you only have your objections for the individual applications regarding the two civil party that you just raised?
Est-ce que
តុលាការអត់មានបកអត់លឺផងហើយលឺម្ដងលឺខ្សោយម្ដង
Court officer, can you check the audio system? Sometimes it can be heard clearly, sometimes it is so weak.
que parfois le volume faiblisse beaucoup trop.
តែពីរហ្នឹងទេគឺ D 25/20 ហើយនឹង E2/57 ដែលធ្វើការ
The President, I would like to confirm again, the Defense Council, do you still showing your objection regarding the individual application of the 25/20 and E2/57?
En l'état des documents qui nous ont été hier soir produits, Monsieur le Président,
Given the documents that were produced last evening, Mr. President, the defense no longer has objections concerning these two civil parties.
je répète, D25/20.
I repeat, D25/20 and E2/57.
អញ្ជើញ
The President, Alang Biangner, you may proceed.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président, Mesdames, Messieurs les
Good
juges.
morning, Mr. President, distinguished members of the court.
Juste pour indiquer que concernant D25/20,
Just a few words to say that D25/20 and E2/57, we wish to thank the defense for the diligence with which overnight they scrutinized the documents and gave us a position this morning. We appreciate their gesture and indicate to the chamber that we will, of course, submit an application so that these documents be translated and filed. The reason why they were not translated is that as soon as we received them, we handed them over to the defense. But once again, we wish to thank the defense for its efforts, and we wish to tell you that we will do all required formalities to ensure that these documents be translated. Thank you.
អញ្ជើញសូមមេធាវីការពារ
The President, the Defense Council, you may now proceed.
មានបញ្ហាអី
Au Conseil de la Défense, et je vous invite
The civil party lawyer, we have noted that you are on your feet. Could you please make sure that you can just say or make the observation which is new from the point you already mentioned earlier? Otherwise, we never end this session. And I hope this is the last chance you can make your observation.
Je vous en prie.
Ms. Trusnaprus, thank you, Mr. President. Simply, I wanted to say to the chamber, indeed, that we filed with the defense new documents this morning, and of course, these documents are being prepared, and we are preparing the motion so that it be filed in conformity with the rules of this court. But here again, we want it because, of course, these applications might be confronted today. Well, we wanted the defense to receive this information in order to respect the principles of adversarial hearing.
The President, the Defense Councils can now proceed with the grounds for the challenges of the civil party applications on a case-by-case basis, and the civil parties will need to prepare to be ready to respond to the challenges presented by the Defense Council. So they will be only given a chance to respond to these applications on challenges.
De répondre à ces observations.
The President, I noted that the civil party would be given the last opportunity, as I mentioned. So what would you want to address again? Could you please be prepared to just rise and express the whole issues you want to address the court, because today's session is about the floor for the challenges of the civil party applications by the Defense Council, and that the civil party lawyers are to only provide the supporting documents to support their civil party applications. And you have already requested for observation, and now for more than 1 hour such observation has been made, but we don't know why you keep wanting to address the court relating to the same old matter. This is the last opportunity for you, of course.
Il s'agit là de la dernière occasion que nous vous donnons d'intervenir.
Ms. Trusnaprus, Mr. President, it was simply a technical problem that I was bringing up. As far as we are concerned, as civil party lawyers, we had considered, but I don't know if the court will accept this and if the defense will object to this, but we considered taking the floor for all of the applications group by group, group number 3, group number 2, group number 1. I do not know if you had considered this way of proceeding, but that was the solution that we are proposing to you. If, of course, this is not possible, well, then again, of course, I will let the chamber decide.
The President. Yesterday, there has been the display in relation to the orders of the challenges. And the chamber would like to, based on this order, and that if civil party lawyers find that any particular civil party applications challenged by the Defense Council, then they are ready to challenge, to respond to those challenges. So the Defense Council, you may now proceed.
J'invite à présent les conseils de la défense à intervenir.
Ms. Canizares, yes, Mr. President, I suggest that we get back to the order that I had presented yesterday, to get back to the list, if of course the chamber agrees, with this way of proceeding. So the first civil party that was brought up yesterday was E2/22. And the defense indicated regarding this civil party that the plaintiff, Mr. Sitachim, was complaining for the general arrest of Division 310, to which he belonged as a former Khmer Rouge soldier. And the defense underlined the fact that the plaintiff was only mentioning friends, and that on top of this there was no document in the case that substantiated the link between the plaintiff and the victims that would have been detained at S21. And I do not need to recall the preliminary observations that were provided by my colleagues Karsavout and François Roux, but it is now up to the civil parties to provide a minimum amount of evidence so that the chamber may decide if such and such a person is able to bring together the evidence that allows this person to join as a civil party. And we believe in this particular case, regarding either kinship link or the fact that the victim might have been detained at S21, well, we consider in this particular case that there is no element that can allow us to consider that these civil parties are enabled to act.
The President, a civil party lawyer group 2. Chum Sita is a civil party in that group, so you may now proceed. Mr. Kong Pisai. Mr. President, thank you. With the President's leave, I would like to preserve our rights to present further evidence and document to support this civil party application if the court needs. The President, the debate is almost coming to an end, and when you asked the chamber when exactly the chamber would prefer the evidence to support their application, I think we are ambivalent as to what kind of comment are you making here, because the hearings will come to an end soon also, and when are you intending to file these documents to the chamber? Because so far as we remember, the civil party lawyers have to be ready and prepared to present the documents to the chamber at any moment they are seized of their documents. And I don't understand why you asked the court this, because the schedule and the ending of the hearing, as expected, has already been informed. And recently, and as yesterday, we already made it known to the civil parties and to the parties to the proceeding about the expectation that the hearings would end. And these proceedings have been well set forth in the proceedings and in the internal rules, and also in the Criminal Procedural Code of Cambodia, and in the other codes in relation to the filing of documents and supporting documents. The President, the Defense Counsel, you may now proceed with another civil party application and challenge.
Le Conseil de la Défense a passé au cas suivant.
Ms. Canizares, regarding the following case, E2/37. Here again, we are confronted with the same case as the previous case because the plaintiff here is referring to 6 of his friends that would have been arrested and killed at S21. And we here again have no evidence of any kind of kinship link with the victims, and as well, we have no document in the file proving that these victims had anything to do with S21.
The President, Civil Party Group 3, you may now proceed.
Ms. Trusnaprus, yes, Mr. President, in this case, it is indeed a person who is coming to join as a civil party because this person saw his friends being arrested and brought to Sling. And in this specific case, it is indeed friends. The civil party brought up in his statement that he was very much afraid, he was frightened, and that he felt extreme suffering when he learned about the fate of his friends. So I would like to refer to my preliminary observations regarding the notion of close acquaintances. And since this person suffered in relation to the loss of his friends, and to see his friends being brought away, well, in these conditions, since we're speaking about a person who's very old, that we cannot contact very easily. This person is living in a relatively isolated area beyond Ratanakiri province. So therefore, it's very difficult to reach this person, and his age as well does not allow him to participate in extremely developed discussions. So therefore, I'm going to let the chamber appreciate this very specific case, to judge on this very specific case.
The Defense Counsel, you may now proceed.
Je m'adresse à la défense. Vous pouvez passer au cas suivant.
Ms. Canizares, regarding E2/66, the plaintiff states that her older sister, Pensetrat, would have been detained at Tulsling. And it happens to be that Miss Pen Sopeat, therefore the victim, seems, according to Mr. Kengek Iu, seems to be the daughter of Vorn Vet. But however, the plaintiff indicated that her parents' name was, well, Penmon for her father and Chintan for the mother. That is to say that it seems that there might be a similar name, that the plaintiff sister's name and the name of a person that might have been detained at S21, but the registration papers of the plaintiff does not correspond to the registration of the victim that she is bringing forth.
The President, Civil Party Lawyer Group 2, you may proceed. Mr. Kongpisai, Mr. President, thank you. Pen Soken, the civil party, saw the photo of her sister at S21. She based her argument on the photo but not on the name that is similar. The defense counsel said, the president, you may now proceed.
Je m'adresse au Conseil de la Défense et vous invite à passer au cas suivant.
Ms. Canizares, regarding civil party D25/15, the defense stated that the plaintiff was not providing the evidence of a kinship link with the victim and did not include in the file elements that allowed us to relate the victim to S21. And the civil party councils provided us with extra documents, and these extra documents do not seem, however, to the defense to be more relevant than the documents that are already included in the case. The only element that we may find in this case are related to biographical data that were compiled regarding a certain victim by the name of Pen but these biographical data was only compiled by DCCAM and do not come from S21.
The President, the Civil Party Lawyer Group 1, you may proceed. Tisrina. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to respond to the challenge by the Defense Counsel regarding this client of mine, D25/15, Sun Siang. I interviewed him and he made it clear that Pan Un was his cousin, not the biological sibling. And we obtained the biography, his biography, at S21. So on the top page of this document, it reads S21 Phnom Penh. So this document is available from S21 compound, and Pan is found in the smashing list dated on the 15th of October 1977, and we, the Council for the Civil Party, searched through the internet of the DCCAM website, and we found out this list. And we have not yet included these documents in the case file, but we will make it available to Defense Counsel after the adjournment. And that we have obtained the document via the internet from the DCCAM website and database. So these documents can be used as the proof to support the claim that my client was detained at S21. His document was seen at S21. Sun Siang also emphasized that he was the cousin of Pan and Sun Siang made his identification card available to us. The documents he maintained previously were not available because now he is more than 70 years old and he did live through the regime, and he really experienced the Khmer Rouge regime, and those documents in relation to the identification of his and his cousin were all destroyed. and burned down in order to escape from being spied on by the Angka or the DK people. He burned down the documents in order to make sure that he could survive without concealing this identification of his. Then he would be arrested and executed like his cousin already. So with these reasons, actually we found it rather difficult to establish the kinship between him and his cousin. However, the council will do its best to find further documents to support the civil party application. Thank you. The President, the Defense Counsel, you may now proceed.
Je m'adresse au Conseil de la Défense. Vous pouvez passer au cas suivant.
Ms. Canizares, regarding civil party E2/35, the plaintiff states that by visiting Tuol Sleng, she would have recognized the photograph of her nephew, bearing number 567. No document in the file can substantiate that the person who was photographed is indeed the nephew of the plaintiff. And I can even say as well that there is no name appearing on this photograph, so we cannot even know by looking at this photograph that it does regard the person that the plaintiff is referring to.
The President, the Civil Party Lawyer Group 2, you may now respond. Kong Pisai. Mr. President, thank you. Regarding civil party application E2/35, this civil party claimed that he saw his nephew at Tuol Sleng, and he knew him very well because he lived, or the nephew lived with him for several years. And during the Khmer Rouge regime, the nephew was the soldier, and later on was arrested. He said that he did not know where the nephew was being taken to, but the nephew left the message with him that he would be arrested. Because we have not seen the name, I mean the similar name of this person, because the mother of this victim had to help another cousin. So we can see that the names are not consistent because the auntie of the victim was the cousin of the person who filed the application, and we tried to find the document in relation to the victim, but it is not possible to obtain those information except the photo, and there has not been any writing on the photo. So at S21, we only saw the photo, and that we cannot really write any additional message on the photo because it would not be genuine. The President, the Defense Counsel, you may now proceed.
Car sinon cela nuirait à l'authenticité de celle-ci. Le Président, je m'adresse au Conseil de la Défense, vous pouvez passer au cas suivant.
Ms. Canizares, regarding E2/38, the plaintiff indicates that his uncle was arrested and detained at Tuol Sleng. Same observations as previously, insofar that we have no element that can substantiate the kinship link between the plaintiff and the victim, and that there is no document as well that can prove that the victim was detained at S21. In particular, more specifically, the defense did not see on the prisoner's list of S21 this victim's name.
The President, Civil Party Lawyer Group 3, you may now proceed.
Pourquoi avocat du groupe de partie civile numéro 3? Je vous en prie.
Ms. Trusnaprus, Mr. President, the civil party is Ms. Etichet-Chon, and I'd like to specify that her father's name, which is mentioned indeed in the documents that were included in the case, because her father is called Sosta Eat, and that the victim is the uncle of my client, called Sos El. So that is to say, the brother of the father of Ms. Uchchon. Now, regarding the proof of kinship link, we already have this element that I just mentioned, but we did what was necessary as for each case. And we contacted the associative network that is trying to bring together extra information, in particular evidence regarding kinship links. So we must, regarding this case, we should be receiving this week, in fact, this specific element of evidence that will indeed be able to prove this link. Now, regarding the link with S21, well, this is a person who was arrested on the 17th of April, 1975, whereas this person was living with his spouse in Phnom Penh. And he was an intellectual, and he was considered to having belonged to Lon Nol's regime. And we all know that on that day, many intellectuals, cadres, civil officials were arrested and were detained at S21. And there is indeed no document, of course, that were found regarding this person. And the link between this person and S21. But however, Ms. Echechov's statement leads us to believe that this statement is perfectly credible, and that indeed it is quite possible or quite probable that this person was detained and smashed at S21. So therefore, I believe that this statement is perfectly coherent, and that you should consider it as such. And I believe that Mr. President, please apologize. I'd like to apologize for this, but indeed in this case, I already had indeed 2 documents that can substantiate the kinship link. It is index ERN 00274587 and ERN 00274587. 5, 8, 9, which, and these are indeed two affidavits from people who know my client perfectly well and who were able to provide all the useful elements to substantiate her kinship link with her uncle. So given the preliminary information that I provided earlier on, I am please asking you to accept and to not challenge this civil party application.
The President, now it is time for a break. The chamber will take 20 minutes break until 10 to 11, when it will resume. The hearing is adjourned. The graphic, all rise.